Good, great, great. Am I blocking your view here? You're good?
Taking off all the restrictions. I'll just hit the arrow.
Should I leave this back here?
Uh,
Oh, and now we're good, right.
I really like your.
The amount is gonna say everything
Right.
about the intention.
Do you need an agenda for your meeting?
The selectmen are just.
Do you need what's there?
they're working.
Scratch paper.
That's not what I thought it was gonna be.
We're gonna do what?
We're planning a Christmas party.
That's later at your house.
Kathleen will not be here tonight. She's fine. Just had a long day.
I'm sorry, we kind of ran over. We usually finish our meetings way before 4:30, so thanks for your patience.
I don't know if this will be, nobody goes on the tennis.
Okay.
Oh, that's what you're
Zooming.
anticipating doing.
Grounds.
So plenty, but
Where's my address?
Huh?
Where's my red address?
David, what am I doing to see if anyone
Just see,
joins?
yeah, because it's all in
Go to
front.
watch
Can I get it?
I guess whatever you want.
Vertical
Vertical
90, vertical 90.
You get it,
I didn't like
okay.
And if it's done right,
Do you have a
I'll
master's?
consider it.
I guess I forgot all about that.
I'll consider it.
Is this a touchpad?
I think you earned it.
I think you have earned your donation too, so, yeah, vertical 90.
Try to remember that. You might have to text me.
Okay, I'll do that. I
Okay. We wound down our meeting, you're good?
We're done. We are
Great.
done. We're good.
Okay, well, call this meeting to order. This is a planning board meeting jointly held with the Board of Selectmen. Correct the agenda to suggest the plural instead of the singular. Um, um,
Actually, it's the select board, if you don't mind.
That makes more sense.
We kind of, I don't know if we made a motion on it, but we said we'd be called the select board from now on to gender non-specific.
Very good. Call the meeting to order. I'm not going to identify voting members because we're not going to vote on anything.
It's a work session.
It's a work session, so we don't need to do that formality. So the order of business is to talk about the capital improvement program. And the reason we're doing this as a joint session is because we would like to get input from everyone. And also make sure that we're reasonably on the same page as to what we're supposed to be accomplishing to serve the select board. Is that right?
Thank you.
And I think when you take a look at, and David, correct me any place where I say anything incorrectly, please. We have the capital improvement program should do several things. One is it should identify what our expectations are over a period of time. Usually the time is a 5 to 10 year frame of reference of expenditures that we might have as a municipality. Either ones that we know are on the horizon or think may be on the horizon, or ones that we don't really know about, but we are speculating about at this point based on things that we do or kind of know or somewhat know. As a good, for example, would be whether or not we build a community solar farm, as a for example. I don't know. Do we do that, not do that? It's not a for sure, but it's something that we can at least understand in the next 5 to 10 years. there should be some expectation that there will be need for us to develop more solar to meet our energy needs and do that in a way that's more carbon neutral. Other things we don't really know about, and as of good, for example, we still haven't heard yet back from the library as to what their strategic plan is. So we don't know what their expenses or potential expenses might be relative to that. We've not heard from the school board specifically, because at the moment they're pretty much involved in trying to straighten out where they're at this, in terms of personnel and managing, getting on board a new principal, and just dealing with a lot of other things, including the high school process. So they've got a lot on their plate right now. And circling back to us about potential expenditures for their building, which they've identified in the past as substandard, has not been a priority for them. So we only have that as kind of a, maybe we understand a little bit about it, and maybe not. Similarly, we've got the fire department where the fire station is substandard and in need of improvement. And a current conversation is, what do we do with that? How do we deal with the expenditures, and how do we approach it? Looking back to the last time the fire station came up from the board's perspective, select board's perspective, the select board agreed not to go to warrant article and agreed not to move forward on anything until there was a capital improvement program that was completed to help identify what the expenses would be. That's what I read from the minutes.
Correct.
And so we've gone through a whole process. That's what brought the facilities committee to light, and that process. And that was one step forward, and now we have the capital improvement plan. Our goal is to identify what those potential expenses are, what they might be, what the dollar amounts might be associated with them, to establish priorities, and also to make a recommendation. This is not a deal where we're just simply scribes and we're going to throw up some numbers and put them on a list and say, well, here, select board, we did some work for you, but you make the final decision. You do make the final decision by asking the voters what they're going to vote on and approve. But it's our job as a planning board to plan and to recommend. And that is our job, and we will do that. I use that as a preface to some of the concerns that we have around getting all this data together. One is, I don't feel that we're going to be prepared, based on the fact that it's almost December. We don't have complete data to complete the recommendation in time for the cycle for warrant articles in this budget cycle. So to the extent the select board is looking for us to do that, unless there's somebody on the planning board who has a different perspective than I on this, what I would suggest is that we are not going to meet the time deadline for this planning cycle.
But that would be for a complete CIP. There are aspects of it that I think that have been well discussed, that, such as the fire station, and as if select board wants to move ahead with that, and we have identified it as being high priority, then it's not up to us as to whether it happens.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question we would have to answer as a planning board is, do we know where it fits in the priority? And do we know whether or not we can afford it?
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
At the select meeting, Bob had an excellent recommendation as to do a campus review as to, what town properties, this immediate, I guess is what you meant by the campus, as to what it is and where different sites might be for, I think he's specifically referring to fire station. And I think that is an excellent recommendation. And I don't know if, in terms of capital improvement plan, if there's any number that you have in mind for that. And I think you said you're gonna check with Burr to see what it might be.
Well, we know what the building is gonna cost, the southern end of the campus, including site work. What we don't know was the potential site that was mentioned at the public hearing, which is right outside here where the town office septic is, and that slope with all that fill there, what the site work could potentially be there. And in fact, we just want to do due diligence because it was brought up. We don't know if we could put a one-story station on that site or not. And so is it cost prohibitive? I mean, we're working from two different areas on that. We're working from folks that have site location concerns and folks that have tax concerns. And there's probably folks that have both concerns. And so that's why we felt like what we needed to do was due diligence to the site that was brought up. I mean, it certainly would be less, I would imagine, than rebuilding on site, because you're not going to have to figure out where you're going to locate your rolling equipment for 2 years. So it may very well have a smaller number to it.
An option, I don't know, you may have considered Orva, but this may be way out, but did you consider using the grazing garage as a site?
Yeah, it's not an
Yeah.
option, it's not big enough to go to the river, we looked at it.
Yeah.
Been measured.
Yeah, I mean, it never been mentioned, so
It's
I
been
don't-
measured, it's been studied, it's
It would have
not.
been nice to.
That was one of the town-owned properties we looked at. The
Yeah.
other one was at the entrance to the transfer station. Those were the only two that could even potentially be considered as far as
That are town.
town property that we currently own.
Okay.
I think you're right as far as timing goes and, and priority items. Obviously, the fire station is high visibility as well as a high need. And we've been talking about it for many years. But there are also, when I look at the list that we've been working off of, a couple of other high priority items, which the roof for the storage facility, which has dropped significantly from the original 390,000 to what did Gary have?
247.
247, so just under 250,000. And that was new information that we got right before Thanksgiving. And then we talked today about a culvert that is in significant disrepair, so it's probably going to be about 200,000 that would have to be done as soon as possible. So when I look at certain things that you hear about that are safety issues, very important town issues that would make things more efficient, and we can almost make an immediate, not decision, but a recommendation on those, they seem to fall into that legitimate recommendation. Like, it's going to be part of the capital improvement plan, but it's also going to be really something you may want to vote on this year. It may fall into that, and you're like, oh, already been said and done, but it doesn't fall into the 5-year plan for all the culvert repairs or all of the needs for all of the different departments and buildings. But also, by prolonging it and not doing it hastily, do you then have the opportunity of getting more feedback and input from the school and from the library, where they can be a thoughtful process? Because putting this together and not having those two huge facilities in this is sort of crazy. Not the right word to use, it's just illogical, I guess. So I feel like there are some real good recommendations that could come out of this before our, like we have the capital improvement plan December 19th. Here's a piece of our recommendation that we don't have the full-blown plan yet. And that might help us with our budget hearings following that to say, these are the real high visibility dollar items that we feel that should be presented to the town in the budget and warrant article hearings.
Well, planning board folks, do you think we can at least circle the wagons and get some of this done?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that, I'll ask Jay about this, in planning for the roads, the maintenance of or improvement of, I know that years back you guys had put together a schedule of what it's going to be in terms of dollar investment per year, and then in subsequent years this kept getting gutted, cut back and cut back.
Yeah, it did.
And as part of that was, or should there be, a plan to schedule within our budget so that it can get done with somebody like Pike, that there would be X amount of skim coating or road maintenance. Is that something that's intelligent?
Yeah, I mean, the 10-year plan that I did, it's being continued. I mean, I know Pat continued it from May, and Gary's still continuing, even though it's been more than 10 years. That's the intent of the whole thing is still being worked on. What did happen is some money did get cut out of the road budget a handful of years ago. So how much that affected it, I haven't studied that. It probably affected it because of inflation and stuff. So, but it is, I'm pretty sure it is continuing just the way we planned it. So as far as workload.
Right. And if you're going to put a number on skim coating or where would you be on that ballpark?
I mean, you could easily spend $300,000 on reclaims and a couple $300,000 on other, like skin coat and pavement and sealing. I mean, there's a lot of inflation on that compared to when I did it in 2015, my last year. But you could easily spend, if you really wanted the roads in top-notch shape, you could spend an easy $500,000. Maybe if you spent $500,000 one year, maybe you wouldn't need to spend $500,000 the next 2 years, and then jump back up type of thing.
But if you said 3 as a ballpark number, would that work?
Yeah, it's tough to answer because I haven't looked at it in a handful of years. So.
And to your point, exactly, some of the things we've got going here for this plan is to renew the commitment for doing and funding certain things that we need to. We do that for whatever equipment we need for the highway department, what equipment we need for the fire department, and I think our resolve to maintain a budget for the highway department has eroded from the time that this was originally set. To your point, things got cut, and they get cut because the intention was to try to keep the tax level as stable as possible, which meant no increases. And no increases, I think this is a comment I made earlier, sometimes when you try to stabilize your budget, you do it at a loss to some of the programs, because some of the programs are growing, some of the costs increase, and other costs continue to have a need, and to offset by saying, I'm not going to do something today in order to save this year's budget, if you keep on doing that too many times, you end up being in a deficit situation where you have to spend $500,000.
Well,
to get
everything's
it right.
gotten, everything got cut. I mean, the fire truck money got cut a handful of years ago right along the roads. I mean, everything got cut there for a little while.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of stabilizing. I mean, cutting budgets is unstabilizing, and that's what happened. Budgets got cut. And so in an effort to keep tax base stable, you just end up kicking a can down the road. And that's exactly what we're looking at in a number of areas right now.
Which is what, that's exactly what you were referring to, is
Yeah.
kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
I think while you're kicking that can down the road, not so much related to CIP, but our undesignated fund balance is 1.4 right now. We're somewhere in that environment. When should the selectmen have a discussion as to what the appropriate level of that fund should be? And when should we start taking some of that to spend the 200,000 on culverts or 300,000 on road maintenance?
Or 250,000 to reduce the tax rate this year?
Hmm?
Or 250,000
We
to
just
reduce the
spent
tax rate?
250,000 out of that, and so we'll know at the end of the year what that unexpended fund balance is.
December 31,
It's
31st, when you know for sure.
It's
Yeah.
gonna
Which have a
be
good idea
somewhere
now of what it
between
The problem I
1
see,
and
Okay.
1.2 million at that point.
the problem that always comes up with that seems like you ask that question and three people and you get three different answers. And it's hard I find it hard to figure out, like, what's the real answer to what's the proper amount of unreserved fund
I mean, in
balance.
terms of what the amount should
Should be in
be.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about we not have that
Yeah, I was gonna
conversation
say,
right
can
now?
we-
Because we can
As
go
I
on,
said,
for-
that's
we can go on-
what
as you
CIP
say, there's 4 different opinions on that, and not one will
No.
come up properly right now. So I'd like to,
My point was that we shouldn't be afraid of putting a high number on, let's say, the road maintenance, and let the selectmen figure out how to do it. Excuse me.
That's probably Piper Construction right there.
yeah, I don't disagree that we should be afraid of funding our needs. And that goes for everything. If we, obviously we have a need to not spend in a crazy manner, I looked to see what my tax rate has been. We've lived here now for 9 years, and the number 6 has been the first number on that until this year. And that's over 9 years. That's amazing. And so when you take a look at that, I would say that whatever thing that the select board's been trying to accomplish, the benefit to me has been a fairly stable level of tax paying. In the meantime, the rate of inflation has gone up by about 15-20%. You would expect that my taxes would have gone up at least half as much as that during that same time frame. Although this year they're trying to catch up really quickly.
Exactly, we just didn't average it, we took a big.
It just took a jump, but it wasn't anything that these guys did. I mean, it wasn't anything that was associated with how the town budget was done. Other forces are saying, hey guys, the costs are increasing, we've got to appreciate that, we've got to increase the tax in order to go with it.
And I just want to get back to the highway and the road department function too. I really do think we've been band-aiding things for sure, and we've been cutting the corners a little bit. But we actually have $154,000 in our highway block grant funds that we've received, and we need to deplete that down by at least $100,000. So it's almost found money that we can use. And we talked about the culvert repairs and some of the road repairs. And when David and I got our spreadsheets out together and kind of did some re-looking at all these numbers and spread them out by years, and we went 2024, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then 32, 33 to bring it to a 10-year period. So the last column has 3 years in it. 4 years in it. But just, spreading some of the things out, and then every day it seems like we find something else out, where we have this 100,000 in the highway block grant funds. Then we have a recalc of the sand storage facility that dropped by 100,000. It's such a moving target all the time. So I think just bringing it back into the fact of what is the most important thing that we really see for 2024. Can we bring that to a recommendation, and then keep working on this to spread the 10 years and saying what else is left? Because the total that we came up with was $11 million, and that included the fire station being rebuilt. So the highest possible number of all these was $11 million. So
none of our numbers include bonding costs, though.
that's correct. This is
So-
just this. So
One or the other.
So when you're presenting that out for $11 million, how do we then? How does this formulate into the plan that says these are the priorities and these are the years where it's going to be projected? But I think if we're down to the wire, fire station, highway department, and I say fire station because we're pretty okay with everything else. I think we've already talked about budgeting air packs over the next 6 years and replacing those.
As long as we continue with that expendable trust fund.
Right, and so that we kind of accounted for. So the really big ticket, the really critical ones, besides the fire station being top of mind, are the sand storage facility and the roads and highways. And that's not an unsubstantial amount by far. The other things are important, but they can easily be projected out. I'm probably saying the same thing over and over again, but I feel like, and just so you know, I also did include in that $2.5 million for the school, because that was a number that was kicked out there a year or so ago. And I said, logically, we need to put something in there. So that included even that number. And moving forward on that, I think is really, where the next jumping off point should be.
When we, set priorities, but something like the roof for the sand storage, I find a high priority because that's going to save us money. I like that. I don't know how you amortize the savings out, but it's money out that will come back to us as a town. So I would say that should be, a pretty high priority.
Right. And not only that money part of it, the other costs are the safety and safety of our workers not hurting themselves and, above and beyond the cost factor, because that to me is like dangerous.
So I think the three priority areas were spot on that we identified, and that was needing to upgrade fire station facilities, the roof for the sand storage facility, and the culvert repair. All three of those are connected life safety issues. And so paving and culvert repair, can be found in highway block grants to an extent and operational budgets to an extent. But where Jerry's question came in, when it comes to capital improvement projects and the unexpended funds account, we've always been told to keep that somewhere between 11 and 14%. And so that's really our intent, I think, is to really have that conversation after the first of the year and make sure that we're using what's there, that's in reserve, that doesn't deplete that account, below our accountant's recommendations, because they seem to be really in tune as a best practice percentage amount.
Well, to circle back though to the Barbara, to the number that you're projecting for the culverts, road maintenance. What was the number that, let's say that for a capital improvement purpose, what was the number that you came up with for the 10 years?
450,000 for we have down 450,000 for road repair over the next 3 years, 150,000 per mile, and there are 6 miles of road, I believe, so 150,000 in each year of 2024, 25, and 26. On the culverts, Gary had originally quoted $105,000 for repairing 7 over the next 5 years. However, in an hour ago, we found out that the one culvert that is the most high priority right now could cost up to $200,000.
That was a number Bert used, yes.
So, and if we have $100,000 to offset in our highway block grant funds, then that could bring that down. But I think that's a number that needs to be nailed down a lot better. I know that Gary was also talking about doing a lot of that culvert work himself with his team, and this may be above that scope.
So the purposes of our CIP for the highway department,
400,000? Is that, no, more than that.
Yeah, more than that.
450 for just the road repair. And again, this is over and above our budgetary amount.
Right.
This is capital improvement, so I
And that's-
believe we have 100,000.
I'm trying to give a number to them to use.
Well, we have 450,000
That's
in the spreadsheet. Yeah, we're kind of working off the same number that the planning board and the select board have. So 450,000, 150 over the next 3 years. And then culvert repair, we had 105,000 total, 21,000 over the next 5 years.
And the roof?
250,000.
The roof is 250,000.
Okay, then could you put a number, and could I make a motion that at least that would be a number we could put in our capital improvement plan?
Yeah, again, we're not going to be voting on anything.
Yeah.
It
No, I
is,
mean,
But, yeah.
it isn't, those
But it's already
numbers,
in.
Those numbers are in here.
those numbers are in the
Although
spreadsheet.
I'm working with an old
I
one,
know,
so it's
I-
got 390 on
Yeah,
it.
one of the benefits of having a
No.
planning board member and a select board member that live in the same household is
Yeah,
that
I know.
they
Okay.
occasionally talk to one
Do you
another.
think they talk?
We talk spreadsheets all the
Or
time.
however you would wish to describe their
Yeah.
interaction.
But I guess I want to talk about what we did after the last meeting. We literally sat down and we got so engaged in this because we did spread the numbers out. We fine-tuned a few things, but then we also added a column to the right of what the capital reserve fund and the expendable trust fund balances will be at the end of this year. And I think that's really important to see what we're projecting now for our capital improvement plan in progress and what we have been saving. So in like heavy highway equipment, there's not a lot that we're going to be spending in the next 4 years, but in the 5, 6 through 10,
Yeah.
there's a lot of money. So, spreading them out, setting the priorities, what's realistic. That's where the fine tuning will come for the long range planning. But when we fine tuned what these high priority numbers, again, for the highway department, the storage facility, the road repairs, and the culverts is probably going to be $500,000 over the next year. And that's huge, but that's something that if we do the roof over the sand storage and we do a significant amount of road repair over and above our normal budgetary paving, and we do the culvert repair, it could, and with the help of the Highway Block Grant Fund, it could be $500,000 that we inject into our community's roads, and that's significant, but it's really important.
Is
And highway
that
safety.
helpful for your capital improvement?
Yeah, but I think we've already done
Done
that,
that.
so I'd like to not cover the same territory twice.
Okay, but I thought, so you could at least put something to bed.
Yes, and in fact,
I think we
that I think
Yeah.
is,
Probably
we're closest to
Yeah.
putting those things that are immediate to bed, that are of not a smaller nature, but of
More defined.
a more definable nature, I guess is a better way to say it. The difficulty we're going to have, and when we talk about priorities, yeah, we're talking about life safety And yet, we're a planning board, and planning board looking at 10 years, I haven't heard one word that says housing on it. Never mind affordable housing.
Right.
And that was the number one reason that people were caring about a capital improvement plan was affordable housing. It was considered the number one thing by 4 times, was it 4 times more important than the fire station?
Yep.
4 times more important, but we are worried about the fire station. My concern is that we'll have a fire station that will have nobody to man it. We'll have a fire station, we won't need a school because we won't have kids here. And we will not have a community here. And we will fund all these capital things that are things without doing any of the homework that we really need to do to enable some of the other things that need to happen that are going to make this community continue to be vibrant. I mean, 10 years from now, I may not be here, you may not be here, I don't know.
I'm gonna be here.
You'll be here.
I am.
But I may not be, and it's not because I don't.
I'm on that list too.
It's not because I don't want to be.
Right.
But I think too, that getting, Scott started the initiative here of having an affordable housing commission, or a housing commission, I should say, not affordable, but a housing commission of $50,000. And that's sort of a number that's like, let's just put an earmarked dollar on there to start the discussion and the process, because somewhere we have to do something, and whether it's in a community effort with other neighboring towns, or if it's in Jackson or whatever, we have to keep talking about it. And that, like you said, it's top of mind.
Yeah.
So yes,
Well,
we need
But
to
it's
get.
not housing, affordable housing is not a Jackson problem, it's a national problem.
That's what I said. It can be neighboring communities, but we have to participate in a solution somehow.
It is, but if you want somebody to be able to purchase a home here in Jackson right now, they have to have $700,000-800,000 to budget. Maybe the cheapest house is maybe $500,000, and that limits the availability of people who are going to be able to come into town. Especially if you're younger and you are not a trustee child or something, and have that benefit. I guess what I'm suggesting is that we are building ourselves. We have definite needs for infrastructure, but we also need to create opportunities like a housing commission. The $50,000 isn't to fund affordable housing, it's to fund an organization that can receive funds. We don't have any ability to receive funds right now because we don't have the basic process to actually even consider putting out grants or receive things in from the federal government, even from the state of New Hampshire. We have basically said, shut ourselves off from anybody providing anything to us that can enable us to do some of the things that we would like to do. We may not be able to do it, but some of the things we'd like to be able to do, some things we actually, I think, really need to do in the next 10 years. We need to start somewhere. We can't just simply say, I need a new roof on the salt shed. And that's what's important to me, when that's 6 times more expensive or 4 times more expensive than a housing commission.
But I think that's what Scott's goal was when he talked about forming this commission, was getting a group of people together to evaluate the likelihood or the possibility of what's available in Jackson. Because we don't, this group here is not going to figure out what is available, what is the need. You and I were just looking at the map over there outside, and it's like, where? And I think that was his goal, was to say, what is a plan? And maybe that's the second part of the capital improvement program, because it's not a single document. It's a living document that's going to evolve over time, even after we write it next year. And maybe the housing commission comes back to us in 2 years or a year from now because they've been able to afford to do a study, they have afforded people to kind of look at the property. And his goal was to say, is it even feasible to do something here or not? And I just think that's the start. That's putting a stake in the ground that says we're willing to look at this as a community to say, how are we going to do this if it's possible? And that's what I think Scott's intention was when he suggested the housing. You know, I went to a group down in North Conway a couple weeks ago, and it was the same thing. It's every community. Yes, it is a national thing. The housing market just went up, just announced came out in October. Housing went down 4%, but the cost of housing went up 7.5% in New Hampshire. So there's less on the market. So
And Scott has put a lot of work into
yeah.
figuring it out. The Habitat for Humanity, to me, is still the best vehicle for figuring that out. And even if a housing commission could work together with them, together with people in Jackson that could, as you say, receive funds and do something with it. But Scott, to me, I would acquiesce to Scott, because Scott knows more about this than anybody here.
Absolutely, but I guess what I'm looking at is, yes, we, because we're trying to do this as a work session with the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, excuse me, that we need to make sure that we're doing both things. We need to provide you with the best what we can do for this cycle, and we should do that.
Right.
And we do what we can. But I don't want us to lose sight, and I don't want the select board to lose sight that just doing that is gonna be what this thing should mean. We really need to be looking at the bigger picture in order to actually do what we're intending to do.
Well, I think we're correct in asking for the funds to start a housing commission, because through that, that's where a grant could come in. That's what, you know, maybe part of the energy of that would be find some money, you know, or find space and find land, but find some money. And as you just said, hey, there's nothing to receive that money in place right now. So if we start that, again, that's something that can come back to us.
Of course, I don't know if anybody saw the article about the fellow who gave the town, what, $3.4
Yeah, he died a millionaire.
million dollars.
Lived in a trailer, but
Yeah,
had a chunk of
so that
money.
you never know, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Freiburg took their snow school and converted it into a fantastic apartment building.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
And so, I mean, there's, and Freiburg, yeah, a bigger community than we are, bigger numbers, but they still did something. But again, I would, Scott, to me, would be the one that I would talk to for guidance.
Yep.
He knows more about it than anybody. He's done more work on it.
absolutely agree. All right, so what else do we want to cover for today as part of the joint session here? What, Barbara?
I think tying down we've pretty much done it. We know the fire station is top of mind and top of conversation. Whether or not it gets passed in the many conversations we're gonna have, budget hearings, warrant articles, bond hearings, all of that, is really almost out of the hands of the planning board at this time, because the fire department and the select board need to decide how we're going to present that to the voters. And, you know, if it's this year, we want to at least get some kind of a gauge for what people feel like they need in the town. We're getting a lot of good feedback, but the vote will tell. The second thing I think that's important is these really urgent highway needs. And we say highway, we don't really have highways, our roads and our safety of our roads. So it's culverts, it's sand storage, and road repair. And if we had to come up with today's recommendation, or today's budget session recommendation, I think those are really 3 high priority areas. The equipment and vehicles, we seem to have a good handle on pushing those out through the 10-year period. I'm just going down the list here. So the police department seems like status quo is fine with them. And the school, again, that is going to be phase 2, we'll call it. And the library, again, sort of phase 2. There is shelving system upgrades that's in there, and that will be a high item there, but also an expansion for the library. The ambulance, we are going to be putting funds towards purchasing a new ambulance. There are a few other things that are under that category, but those need more discussion as well. I think the Affordable Housing Initiative, or what we'll call the Housing Commission, let's say, I think that's a huge priority to get started conversation and funding, resources, all of that. So I'm sort of putting 2 paths to go. Town-owned buildings, the fire station is unfortunately, or fortunately, going to dictate a lot of what happens to the rest of the town campus. Whether it be the library, the town-owned buildings, even Grayson Garage for storage purpose and things. And David and I also put a number in for repurposing the old fire station, because that has to be considered. Yep. So if we end up putting fire station over here, then what do we do with the old one? What do we do with Grayson Garage? Those are sort of going to be the phase 2 part of it. So all of these line items here are huge and important for that 10-year plan. But I think right now, the highway, the housing, and the fire station are the immediate presentations. That sort of recaps it by the, I think this is great though, because so much work has been done, and comparing it to the capital reserve and expendable trust funds, like solar power, we have an expendable trust fund for the solar power that we've been funding. That's awesome. We have a jump start on it. So there are so many things already that we do have a little bit of a jump on, that we can decide if we want to keep funding, fund more. And again, even talking about the library, in the select board meeting today, we're going to be setting up an expendable trust fund for maintenance for that, which we don't even have. So getting your finger on the pulse of the urgencies and the long-range plan, that's where I think it should go.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Good summary.
I'm so hungry. No, I'm just kidding. I just
Second.
No, I'm really excited to be involved in this, and I think these joint meetings are really great, because I don't want you to come to the select board with us kind of deer in the headlights wondering what you did. So I think these are really valuable joint sessions. Like we said, they've never been done before, and it just helps us know what we're going to be expecting. So it'll hopefully help our decisions.
Well, one of the things that Frank said, I'm sure here, and I think I mentioned it last time, is that we don't really have a chance to talk.
Right.
And that's wrong.
Here we are.
If we don't have the chance to talk and share what our thoughts are and how we're approaching things, we won't get anywhere. It's not about creating a hot potato and then throwing it. It's about, everyone cares about what we're doing. We all have different perspectives about it, I'm sure, but we all care about it.
Yeah.
And I think we all are hoping to do the best thing we can.
On that note, as far as talking too, I feel like planning board, select board, library trustees, school board. And I would love to have more joint sessions with them, because I feel like there's such a miss not having capital improvement numbers for the school and the library on this. So hopefully by the time phase 2 gets ramped up more, I hope that there is more clarity on what the needs are there, because they are part of the campus and the town.
Did you just suggest more meetings?
I know, what the hell? Shoot me now.
My stipend gonna change per meeting?
I met next year sometime, but
Well,
no,
you-
I don't know if it's meetings or just communication
No,
somehow, but.
yeah, and that really was the intent of the liaisons when we set them up.
Right.
Was to reach out and then come back and report in, and, you know, obviously, that's happening with the fire station.
Mhm.
And with Kevin as the other liaison I have, is, he's always here to report, but yeah,
Mhm.
that is the intent, is communication channels can look a number of different ways, and
Mhm.
as long as everybody's getting the information. And I
Mhm.
think you're right, if we're operating in silos, then
Yeah,
we're
Yeah,
not necessarily in tune.
I think the one outstanding item that we really haven't talked about is, call it what you will, an open to buy, willingness to spend, the ability to sell the idea of some of the expenses, is how much the town body is willing to absorb in increased taxes, all these things that we're looking at. And
Well, if you put, you said it would be 500,000 to do some of these extra stuff.
mhm,
How much does that raise the tax rate?
right. And,
Up, if that's 500,000 above all the regular stuff.
right, and I think that, I don't know that number right now, but I could probably, pull it up in 30 minutes or something, but that's huge, because some people think of $500,000 and some people think of X dollars in taxes, and it has to be presented both ways.
Right. I mean,
Very
people who
fair.
are used to just a household budget find it a little hard to stretch the mind over a townwide budget,
Yeah, yeah,
except, you know, for those people who are working with larger industry. You know, $1 million here and there is not that much.
Rounding. Yes, no.
Right.
Well, I think we're always gonna be up against that consideration also, you know, and we have gotten advice in the past that we want our town budget to grow to the tune of 2.5, 2.75% per year. If you're not, you're just doing that can kicking, and you're gonna end up and we ran into that in the past where our town budgets were spiking because we weren't keeping up with our roads, and now the pendulum is, our roads were in great shape, you know, really 5 years ago, and we knew what we needed for reclaims, we knew what we needed for box cuts, we knew what we needed for skim, and it seems like there can be a more proactive and data-driven approach to these things. I'd like to see the town report list out a little bit more over the course of a 3 to 5 year plan, what we intend to do with special projects and things like that. And yeah, it'd be in a perfect world, it'd be great if we woke up on January 1st and had $1.4 million. I'm not sure that's gonna happen, but when that dust does settle, we are going to be looking at spending the responsible amount that's there for us on a lot of this stuff. And I couldn't agree with David more that this is a living document, and things change. And I think if you know, especially in this day and age, the minute you think you've got something locked in, you're really probably looking at it the wrong way.
Right, that color that Bert talked about tonight, that was a bolt from the blue that
wow.
I wasn't
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
counting on, and that's a big number.
I just want to say that, to keep in mind that we're not in competition with any other town on our tax rate.
Mhm.
We're gonna do what's right for our town. So we don't have to worry about how we look against anybody else, which has happened in the past. And the other thing is how important the leadership continuity is. The people at the top that will keep this going. Because this is a great discussion, but if it goes away and doesn't happen anymore, or doesn't happen next year, we didn't do it.
Mm.
all right, I think we used up what time we expected to spend.
Not to add one more thing to the list, but I was just looking at the 2009, and maybe we don't have to put it on, but the Whitney Center is mentioned in the 2009 capital improvement. Do we need to, I mean, we have solar to put on there, is that enough? I mean,
Solar on the Whitney Center.
is that what we are responsible for? I don't know what we're responsible for that building, but it was on that.
Well, we have a character with witness here, I think, in the audience.
Well, I think the Whitney Center falls under the school,
Right,
and so it would be part of whatever the school's strategic plan is.
right.
So, the building itself.
Yeah,
That's
so that's,
And it also has a source of funding through the
Yeah.
Whitney.
Yeah,
but that's, I
it's a
guess.
little different. It has some funding and it has some autonomy. I mean,
Yeah,
So I guess the question there would be, if we can't get a number from the school board on anything definitive there,
that number I think they could give.
is it possible that we can maybe scoop that number up from the depth?
I think the only thing that in talking to the members of the school board, that they're willing to discuss is the need, and this isn't part of the capital improvement regulation, is the need for competitive wages. That in order to keep the people they have, they've got to budget more money.
Yeah, well,
And then the other
it's
thing.
not usually less.
The other thing that's getting thrown in, and I guess you guys know about it, is the recent Supreme Court ruling that the funding for the proper schools isn't, which that could be a big number for Jackson.
yeah. Chris is gonna do a little research for us and presentation at
Yeah.
the next select board. meeting, respectfully.
It's several hundreds of
That
thousands
would
of
be,
dollars.
that would be a game changer. It hasn't happened yet, and there's always been pushback whenever it does go to happen, but,
Yeah, but it could be $300,000 to $500,000 a year.
yeah.
Dick, are you on cue? I mean,
I think he's made a motion.
Motion?
Second.
thank you much.
Thank you for having us.
I'm a teacher.